This week we're weaving and you're going to need the following kit. You'll need scissors and then your cardboard loom, which is a piece of cardboard with little V's snipped into the top and bottom. You'll also need some tape, and then importantly you'll need some wool, and you'll have 2 balls of wool that you can play with. We've also got some offcuts of lovely shaggy thick wool and some pieces of ribbon and strips of fabric, which will be brilliant for creating texture. Then we've got some lovely shiny string in there too. You'll also have a little plastic needle and a straw. So the first thing we're going to do is attach our warp threads. The warp threads are the pieces of wool that stay still all the time. They're going to run from top to bottom and you'll weave in and out of them. So take your wool and hold it onto the cardboard. You can put a bit of tape down if you like, make it easier, but start winding your threads from top to bottom in the valley of the little zigzags on each end of your card. You will need to keep unravelling your wool as you go. So once you get to the end, snip your wool off with a long tail and take the end from the beginning and the one from the end and tie them together with a double knot. You'll have a piece of wool going diagonally from start to finish, and this is the back of your weaving. And there's our loom ready to go. Now we're going to start weaving with our weft threads. It's easy to remember the name because you weave from weft to right. So you're going to take a piece of wool and cut it, then take your plastic needle and thread the wool through the needle. Once it's through, you can tie a knot in the end to make sure the wool doesn't slip out. Remember, you don't have to use a needle, you can always use your fingers. Now it's time to get weaving. So here's a tip to make things a bit easier. You can take a ruler and slip it between the warp threads and the cardboard. Once it's in, turn it up on its side and it lifts all those threads away, which makes it easier to get in and out with the needle or with your fingers. Now you're going to start at the left and go under the first warp thread. Then you're going to stitch over the second warp thread and you'll continue under and over and under and over till you get to the end of the threads. When you get to the end, pull your weft thread through and leave a little tail on the left hand side. Can you see? Under, over, under, over, under, over. Before we start our second line of weaving, we have to look at where we finished our first line. Our first line finished under, so we have to start over. Over we go. Now that we've done our second row, we have to push our weft threads down so they're sitting nice and snug with the first row of weaving. When we're weaving, we need to remember not to pull too tight on our strings, otherwise they'll pinch in at the sides like this. So let's do the third row. We've finished going over, so we'll start going under. I'm finished with the pink wool now, so I'm going to snip it off, leaving about 5 centimetres of wool at the end. It might look a bit messy now, but we'll tidy it up later. Now I'm going to change the texture and use some lovely fluffy black wool. It's the same principle as the pink wool. We're just going to take a few strands and weave them over and under, over and under. I'm going to use my fingers for this one because the wool's a bit thick for the needle. You can see that I'm using ribbon and pieces of fabric in the same way as the wool. Now it's time to take your weaving off your loom. So turn over your loom. See the diagonal piece of wool? We're going to snip that with our scissors. Now open out those pieces of wool and lie them flat. Now we're going to cut all the other warp threads too. You're going to carefully cut through all the warp threads. I decided to use a weight on my loom so that my work didn't unravel. So I've opened up all the threads and laid them flat. I'm just checking that none of the wool is sticking to the cardboard. Once you're sure of this, you can carefully lift up your cardboard loom. To make sure that our weaving doesn't unravel, we're going to tie all these warp threads together. Take warp thread number 1 and tie it to number 2 in a double knot. Once you've done that, take number 3 and tie it to number 4 in a double knot. We're going to do this all the way across the weaving on the top and the bottom. You might end up like me and have an odd one out. So just take the last warp thread and use that to tie a double knot. Now it's time to tidy up those messy ends. You'll need your tape for this. You might want to cut off some pieces ready to use. Take all the messy tails and fold them to the back side of your work. Then take your tape and stick them down. To make your hanger, you're going to turn your weaving upside down so the front is lying facing the table. Lie your straw on top of your top warp threads. You're going to fold the threads over the straw onto the back of your weaving. Once you've done this, take some tape and stick these down securely. If you want to, you can tidy up the tail ends at the bottom of your weaving. Just use your scissors to snip the threads to the length that you would like. To finish off your hanger, take your thread and measure 45 to 50 centimetres. You can then attach this thread to one end of the straw with a double knot. Next, you'll attach the other end of the thread to the other end of the straw with a double knot. And that's it. There's your finished weaving ready to hang up.